Here, page 184. Dalet, Maran writes, Mayim sheshatu mihem tarnegolim. Water that chickens drink from, roosters. 184. Only click mehem hakelev, where a dog laps water from that source. Yesh mishu posel, there is someone who holds that's not good. Vein dvarav nirin, says Maran, but his opinion doesn't seem correct to me. אלא בין באלו בין בכל שאר בהמה חיה ועוף יש להכשיר. Rather, by all kinds of birds and domestic animals, that water stays kasher even if an animal licks from them.
So he says domestic animals, which is a wild animal.
Leave it as animals. Some just want to be stripped by a dog or a pig. But the bottom line is Maran doesn't agree. (186) אין מלאכה פוסלת אלא במים שאובים. The only time that someone using the water makes it not kasher is if the water has been drawn away from its natural source. Ben shem bekelim, ben shem bekalka, whether they're in utensils or they're in the ground. אבל לא במי מקווה או מעיין בעודם מחוברים. But if the water is still in the mikveh, or the water is still in the river or the natural body of water, it doesn't make a difference what it was used for, because it's still in its original tahol place. That's obviously talking about water that was used for work. But if the water actually became bad itself, like it spoiled or changed colors, that even a mikveh would be a problem. He's referring to, remember yesterday we mentioned if you put the bread in the water or those kind of things where you use the water. 187. Chamei ha'o. Chamei ha'o. How do they translate this?
Water heated by fire may be used to wash one's hands.
Chamei ha'o notim mehem liyadayim afilu hen chamin shehad soledet. You can use heated water even though it's so hot that it could burn your hands.
Okay, so the way they put it is hot enough that a child's abdomen.
Yeah, we're getting to that.
Okay.
Pirush in parentheses, kol shekriso shel tinok nichva himenu. What do they mean that a hand gets burned from it? It means that a baby's belly would be burned from it. Are these things synonymous with each other? What can handle more heat, your hand or a baby's stomach?
Your hand.
So how do you say, any water that's so hot that if your hand will be burned from it, meaning a baby's stomach will be burned from it?
Yeah.
Those are two different...
Yeah. Different criteria. What are you looking at?
Page 190. Chamei Tveria, the hot springs of Tveria. יכול להטביל בהם את הידיים. You're allowed to dip your hands into them, אבל ליטול מהם בכלי לא, but you can't take water out and pour using that water. ואם המשיך אותן בארץ דרך חריץ חוץ למקומם, והפסיקן מהמעיין הנובעהם, חי בין הנובע חם, and if you make a channel, like a canal, and you take the water out, and then you cut it off from its original source, אם יש בהם שיעור מקווה מדמים את הידיים, if it has enough water to be a mikveh, how many did we say? 40 sa'ah. What is 40 sa'ah? About?
80 gallons. 86.
80 something gallons, is it?
83.7. 87.7.
You have it in your notes?
Yeah. 87.7.
87? Well, that's good memory, wow.
Thank you.
ואין אין בהם שיעור מקווה? לא. But if there's not enough water to count as a mikveh, it's not okay. ואם חריץ זה מימיו מחוברים למי המעיין הנובע חם, and if this thing is attached to the original hot water source, לרש"י והרשב"א מטבילים את הידיים. According to Rashi and Rashba, you could dip your hands inside of this water. ולרבנו יונה, אין מטבילים בו את הידיים. לכון רבנו יונה of Girondi, you're not allowed to dip your hands inside of this water.
You know, they have that the opposite in Europe.
I see. Actually, no, hold on. You're right. Look here. You see in your book the first N is in brackets,
Yes.
and the second N is in parentheses.
Right.
In rabbinic literature, when you see a word in brackets, it means it's supposed to be read. And when you see a word in parentheses, it means it's supposed to be taken out. So why don't they take it out, or why do they put it in? Because they don't want to mess up any order that might have originally been in here. So you're right. I read it incorrectly. But yeah, so all the way around. Rashi and Rasbaz say you don't wash your hands in it. Rabbi Yonatan says that you do.
What's this water again?
Hot water from the hot springs of Tiberias in Israel. Like hot springs. Imagine natural hot springs.
Are you
Yeah.
reading down here?
What's the source of that switcheroo?
40 soil.
This is a great question. Where's the regular?
Oh, you're saying that it can't be made
It's a mikvah amount.
That's connected to the source. Right.
They don't always tell you, but let me see if it does.
Aim, there you go. Two aims. See aim in square
Is it, in
brackets.
this edition, it doesn't even have parentheses and brackets. It just says it that way.
It's like computer code. It's very different. It's a square bracket with a bracket. Yeah.
It could be that whoever was copying over this Shulchan Aruch made a mistake. Now, sometimes they'll fix the mistakes, sometimes they won't. For example, in the Vilna Talmud, you'll notice, at any given page, they have corrections. Don't read it like this, read it like that. So why don't they just put the corrections in? Jews are very afraid of messing with text. Even when there's a mistake, they'll try to preserve the mistake.
It's a lot of corrections.
Well, no, not all of them are corrections. Some are also sources. And which makes for problems because why are we preserving mistakes? Some people, maybe this, maybe that. Some of the mistakes are malicious mistakes. Some of them were made there on purpose by the Catholic Church. Some of them are self-editing mistakes. We're trying to hide certain things from other people. And not all of them are clear why they happen this way or why they happen that way. Some mistakes in Talmud are very interesting. Some mistakes are, let's say I was a printer of the Talmud, and the manuscript that I got on was of the great Rabbi Raphael who lived in the town of so-and-so. When he passed away, he had a handwritten copied edition of the Talmud. Now some of those handwritings are not actually the Talmud, some of them are his notes. See, before he left yeshiva, he copied over the Talmud. But he also wrote his own notes in there. And I, the printer, don't know I don't know Talmud, I just know the printing press business. So I took his words, I paid someone to make them into plates. We started printing entire editions of the Talmud that became the staple of the Talmud study in most yeshivot. And then there are random sentences that don't seem to make any sense, or there are explanations of the Talmud that contradict other explanations. Because Rabbi Raphael didn't know of a certain understanding or a certain translation, a certain explanation, and I, the printer of the Talmud, I codified his mistakes into being. There's a lot of that stuff going on also.
Those are printers mistake more.
Printers' mistakes. For example, this photocopy of the Rambam that I have right here. This book, I think, is printed in 1950. More or less. But there's nothing special about this book. Meaning, the cover page. They redid the cover page. Put their logo on it. But this photocopy is 100, 200 years old. It's just one edition copied of another edition, copied from another edition, copied from another edition. And then people just kept changing the title pages. And so, yeah, I may have put out the newest edition of the Rambam, but I still have all the mistakes they had 200 years ago.
We've been able to preserve the Torah so accurately and for millennia. Why wasn't that applied to Talmud? It seems like they would have said, if we could do it for the Torah and we could do it for the Megillah, why wouldn't we do it for Talmud? Was the Mishnah also subject to this?
This book could cost me $40.
Right.
If it would have to be subject to the same rules of the Torah, it would cost me like $4,000.
Right.
Because the way it works in the Torah is if they make a mistake, they scrap the whole thing. I mean, they scrap the page and they start over again. And that's how we've managed to keep. If you make a mistake in Sefer Torah, it's done. It's over. The whole thing is pasul until you fix it. If we would hold that same standard to all of our books, we wouldn't have a printing business.
Also, must be at least 10,000 times as many words in the Talmud as in the Torah.
For sure. You also have to remember we don't have an
And
original edition
commentaries.
we're copying from. It's kind of like copy here, we copy there, we copy all around.
It was oral.
And
right?
this, many books, I have some books. Sometimes I can't afford a new set of books. So I buy an older set of the books, and that older set, they'll have in the back, list of corrections. I mean, the printer knew that there were 200 mistakes in the book that they have to fix, but it's going to cost too much money to fix those certain mistakes. It's much easier to print 10 pages of, on page 443, on line 3, word 6, don't read this, write that instead. It's much easier to do that, at least it used to be. Today, you can go back and just, copy paste. Before the copy paste, before the backspace, you have to redo the whole setup of the whole page, and can you fit all the words inside? It was a headache, and a lot of those things, they're perpetuated. Some of those things, people are adamant not to change. Like in Aleinu L'Shabech. There's a sentence there. You'll find the one of the blue. See the one blue? No, the on the right. Oh, Hebrew. Oh, yeah, perfect.
He's talking a couple of weeks.
You're right. Over here.
Sephardim say it,
Some Ashkenazim.
but some Ashkenazim Siddur don't even have it.
Correct.
Oh, really? It's in the parentheses now?
Yeah, it's not even French, it's not even.
See this parentheses?
Yeah.
שהם משתחווים לריב ומתפללים אל לא יושיע ואנחנו.
Yeah.
This sentence here is in parentheses. It essentially says, Hashem, you didn't put our portion like them, because they prayed down, they bow down to emptiness and nothingness, and we pray, and they pray to the God who does not answer them. And we bow down and pray to the King of Kings, the Creator of the universe. That's Alim Shabbat. And when the Catholic Church starts printing our Sidurim, why the Catholic Church is printing our Sidurim? Yeah, they own the printing presses, and if not them, then at least they censor what's being printed. Who censors Jewish books? You think the Pope knows how to read Hebrew? The Jews, very good. The Jews who converted to Christianity wanted to prove just how Christian they were. And so they went to yeshiva, they went to day school, they knew how to censor our books. There's a book that was put out recently, I suggest you read. It's called From the Torah from the Days of Wrath by Rabbi Dr. Henry Abramson. He's the dean of Touro College, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a book, the Ish Kodesh, written by the PSS and the Rebbe's. His essays from the Warsaw Ghetto, they uncovered. And what he did is something brilliant. He did a study showing every essay that was written by the PSS and Rebbe, which historical facts happened in the Warsaw Ghetto that led him to speak about what he spoke about. It's like original research. And he shows how the PSS and Rebbe had a certain perspective, which he never mentions the Nazis by name. He never talks about actual events. He always alludes to events that not to ruin people's morale, but to still address an issue that's happening in the ghetto at the time. And you see that it directly correlates the things he says, the things he writes, the thing. It's an unbelievable work. I read parts of it. My wife is reading the book right now. Torah from the Days of Wrath.
Oh, thank you.
By who?
Rabbi Dr. Henry Abramson. I haven't listened to his classes, but he also has a whole series on YouTube of studies in Sephardic Chachamim. He's very well learned person from what I see. I don't know him personally. I never studied by him. I just sharing him. In there, he has a whole section dedicated to the kapos. These are Jews that work for the Nazis. And it was like forget the fact of people helping the mass murders of the Jewish people. Put this on the side. That's a major issue. But you find that these kapos had to buy their own uniforms, their own whistles. They paid for their own bikes. The Nazis didn't give them anything. The Nazis didn't even pay them. They were motivated either by, we don't want to be like those Jews, or we want to prove ourselves and how good we are to the Nazis because then they will save ourselves, and whatever motivation they went through, and how they were the laughingstock of the Nazis. Because look at these Jews who we're not even paying them. They have no incentive to help us aside from something in their own mind is making them want to help us. It's one of the most horrifying and heartbreaking out the word. It's almost like repulsive parts when you read about it. Anti-Semites killing us is something that we're used to, unfortunately, in our history. But the Jews that help them is a whole different parasha. It's another place. So these Jews that are helping the church edit our books, they're a whole other playing field of how much they hated on the side. So they did a clever gematria. They bow down to a god of nothingness and emptiness. Varik, from what I understand, comes to a similar gematria as the word Yeshu. You see, when they say emptiness, they're alluding to your God. Now we are just referring to emptiness. That's what we're referring to. Yeshu's not so special that he gets a alluded mention in our Siddur. But they take out this sentence as offensive to the Christians. The Jews now, in Ashkenaz, have censored books. And these books are censored. So it used to be people just said these words by heart. After a certain point, you don't remember always what you're supposed to mumble by heart when you're supposed to read from the book, and it becomes standard practice. And as soon as Jews are able to print their own books, like Art Scroll, ironically this is not one of the times where Art Scroll is censoring books. There are other times where Art Scroll does that. Art Scroll has an opportunity to put back the original words of Aleinu. They do. The reason they put in parentheses is because they know how Jews and their tradition is it's a very tradition. They change what it says in the... We didn't change, we're changing back. Like we're going back
the way it
to...
was.
We're going away from Catholic Church Nusach back to Nusach Ashkenaz. Now there are certain groups, for example, Lubavitcher Rebbe has a letter. There are some Ashkenazim that they will say the regular version, meaning minus the parentheses, except for the high holidays. Maybe on Yom Kippurim, they add in this Nusach. If I'm not mistaken, it's a custom in some yeshivot to do that. At least once a year you should say the right version. It doesn't match the tune the rest of the year. It doesn't match the... But at least once a year to do it right. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has a piece, I don't know, I think it's in his diary, Hayom Yom, his daily teachings, which he says that we are so adamant to stick to our original Nusach that we will even do it on Yom Kippurim. Which when you look at it objectively from a historical place, it's a little bit silly. It's a little bit... I'm not saying that action is silly, that's obviously Chabad's chazon, they should do what their Rebbe tells them. But it's almost like oftentimes we'll preserve the mistake on purpose. When it changes our Nusach into a Nusach Catholic Church, like really that's where it goes down. There are a lot of times where you see this. You'll see, oftentimes Shulchan Aruch will use the word goyim, like pat shel goyim, or chal. And then you'll see the Jews use the word akum, which means pagans. The Catholic Church didn't want that we should write so many bad things about non-Jews. What do you mean bad things? That people who don't believe in Hashem, that are not Jewish, are non-Jews. They believe, well, we're not Jewish, but we're the chosen people, so how could you call us non-Jews? This is their whole thing. We're the Church of Israel. We're not. They didn't just try to be Christians, they tried to be us. And when our books excluded them from being us, they changed the words. So no longer are there mentions of non-Jews, there are mentions of pagans. Now today, I am very careful. I don't say pagan. Why do I say pagan? Why am I hating the pagan? This is a halakha that applies to anybody who's not Jewish. But in most Jewish communities, in the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambams and the books, it all says akum. It still says pagans. Because we're too afraid to correct our own books.
Why are you so afraid?
Tradition.
So traditions trumps truth?
They shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. If I'm already suggesting academic books, I'll suggest another one. This one, I don't know him personally. Someone that I know people who know him. Seems to be a very big Talmid Chacham. I can't vouch for anything. It's also from another author. But I don't know a person. I'm not vouching for everything they write. But from what I've read so far, I'm enjoying the writing. There's a Dr. Mark Shapiro, is his name. He writes a lot on the internet. You'll find a lot of his writings. I ordered a few books of his recently. One of them that I'm enjoying very much is called Changing the Immutable.
Oh.
How Orthodox Judaism rewrites its history. Fascinating work. You see old books that have things in them. The new edition just has a blank page, or some of them even do sloppy jobs. Like there's 2 sentences whited out, and it's a photocopy of that page. Like, some of them is actually missing. Like if you wouldn't know to look for it, you wouldn't find it. But some of them things are taken out, or ideas are revised, or you'll find an old Rambam in the front of the page, a bunch of naked people in the cover. And then the next edition, they're all blacked out. What was okay 200 years before no longer became okay in the Jewish community. And you find certain ideas that are purposely censored out. One of them is a fascinating topic. There seems to be that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach once mentioned that one would be allowed to tell Lashon Hara to their spouse if that Lashon Hara would have been constructive, meaning getting something off of their chest, not to just share gossip, but it's therapeutic for me to tell you. He entertained the idea that it may be permissible. He didn't rule it permissible. It maybe is permissible. In all the subsequent editions of that book, that sentence is taken out. Simply edited out something they don't want to be there. famous wars between two Hasidic groups. Sadigura, one of the brothers, decided to leave tradition. He was a Rebbe. He decided to become a maskil from the Jewish Light movement. His brothers didn't want to condemn him publicly, so the other Hasidic groups waged war on him. It was going on for maybe 100 years, this war. And in all the modern Hasidic history books, simply omit this fact. Or they say, in the days of the terrible machloket, and they don't write what it was. Because it doesn't look good anymore to talk about it. This happens with many, many things. That history is simply just changed. There's a communist historian who writes, the hardest part about being a communist historian is predicting the past. Like you don't know what you should say the past happened to justify today. It's very unfortunate. Sometimes you'll find this in our books. This happens to be what seems like an innocent mistake. It's two opinions, one said yes, one said no, and they were flopped. But it's a good question then to ask, like, what's the origin of this mistake? Because sometimes the origin has a lot more to it than what you would think. For example, and I haven't done all my research myself, but Mark Shapiro suggests in his book, if I'm not mistaken, he's studied by Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, the Sridei Esh that I mentioned to you here before, if I'm not mistaken. He mentions how, remember I've told you before, there are a few opinions about covering hair for ladies. There's Chamad Yosef, you have to wear, it has to be a scarf. Then the Chachamim would say, it's okay with the wig. Then the Chachamim would say, like Rabbi Yosef Masas, it doesn't even have to be covered at all. And we always paint Rabbi Yosef Masas to be like some crazy rogue opinion. And he showed something amazing. The Ben Ish Chai has a famous sentence we've quoted here before. And that's what my edition of the Ben Ish Chai says too. It says, those who go to Ashkenaz will be surprised to see that in the countries of Edom, the Jewish women don't cover their hair. And he says, and maybe he even suggests not to go there for business because of that. But he says, their rabbis justify this practice by saying that here, nobody covers their hair anymore. Like, ladies don't cover their hair at all, so it's not considered disrespectful to a lady when her hair is not covered. And that's what it says there in the book. And you almost would think from there that he's making, like, they say that because everyone's doing it, so, join the cool kids. Like, you don't have to cover your hair anymore. But he has photocopies of the original edition of the Ben Ish Chai, which the Ben Ish Chai adds, and we don't have a halachic argument to counter them with. I mean, this logic is sound. We may not like it. We may ask in our communities that ladies cover their hair, but it's a sound. The rabbis of Ashkenaz were not stupid, and they had a solid argument. They said it's a social, it's a subjective tzniut rule. And the later editions of the Ben Ish Chai simply take out those words of, and we have nothing to challenge it, because it doesn't look good. The censorship happens Sephardic, Ashkenazi, Hasidic, right-wing Orthodox, left-wing Orthodox. It goes the other way too. I told you once here about a certain professor that was publishing a memoir of Rav Soloveitchik. And it was trying to publish all the letters that were ever written to Rav Soloveitchik. And one of them, there was a letter from a famous Rosh Hashiva. If I would tell you his name, you know who he is. He passed away. He was one of the famous early Rosh Hashivas in this country. And he writes a letter to Rav Soloveitchik, honoring him, and then saying, but this is all before you went off the derech. This is before you became a heretic. And you do all kinds of terrible things over there in New York, and you've tainted the legacy of your family, and da-da-da-da-da. And so this author, when he published the book, he took out that last paragraph. Because he wanted to publish a letter from the Rosh Hashiva to Rav Soloveitchik, but without all the trash talk about Rav Soloveitchik. He said for 12 years he's been holding it in that he censored a book also. I mean, you always blame the right wing for censoring books, but here, we censored in the other direction. And then he said that he read an interesting article by a researcher who, what is censorship of books? And I don't know if this is accurate, but his definition of censorship was anything that could be understood correctly with the omissions. If you delete something but you could still understand the rest correctly, it doesn't alter the meaning, it's not a full censorship. Yes, you censored the paragraph you didn't want people to read, but it didn't take the rest of the letter out of context. So he claimed all the positive things that were said about Rav Soloveitchik were real even if you took this paragraph out. So the fact that he did, he doesn't feel so bad. But still, it's a scary thing when you start to think about censorship and are we being taught things or read things that are not the way they used to be. And the first thing people do is they get defensive. And the easiest thing to scream is tradition. And that seems to be what Jews do all the time. And that's incorrect. It's not the correct way to approach it. We'll continue next week on Monday.